we're going to get started. It looks close to the number that I'm expecting today, and it's a couple of minutes past. So Meg, if you can just continue letting people in. Welcome, everyone. Just a quick introduction for myself. My name's Becky Vine. I'm the Senior Programme Manager for the Midlands Finance Academy. And the Lunch and Learn today, we're looking to give a bit of an overview and introduction to the Towards Excellence accreditation, some advice on the process, particularly for those doing their level 1, and talking about the benefits of accreditation. We will be looking at level 1, but also looking at kind of how that moves beyond into level 2 as well. And I just wanted to pause and say, I know this is an especially difficult time at the moment for a number of reasons. So thank you to everyone for making the time to join us today, and a particularly very big thank you to the speakers today who've given their time. Just in terms of the running order, so we will be hearing from Sophie Rowe from the One NHS Finance team first. And then from Alex Self and Carol Turner from Derbyshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust, who are a level 1. And then we'll be hearing from Mike Rutherford from East Midlands Ambulance Service NHS Trust, which is also level 1. And then lastly, we'll be hearing from Tricia Penny and Matt Morgan from the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust, who are a level 2. We'll pause at the end of each of those presentations for any questions. So please either type your questions in the chat or use the raise hand function. And there's also a short feedback form, which I'll drop into the chat at the end of today if anyone wants to just give some feedback, not only on today, but on anything else they think the Academy could do to support an accreditation. And we are recording the session today, so that will be available on the One NHS Finance website. So I think that was all the kind of housekeeping from me. So Sophie, I'm going to hand over to you to get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophie Rowe. I'm Senior Programme Manager at One NHS Finance, and as part of that I look after the accreditation programme. So I was going to talk you through a bit of the background to accreditation. So I'll just check everyone can see the slides. Yeah, fantastic. Yes, I'll talk about a bit about background, a bit about the process, the benefits, and then I've got some hot off the press staff survey scores for finance directorates and the correlation between that and your accreditation levels. So I can show you a bit about that as well. So the accreditation programme actually started in the Northwest region over 30 years ago now. So it's been a long running process in the Northwest. And back in 2015, 2016, Paul Baumann, who was CFO of NHS England at the time, I went to review the process in the Northwest and thought it was a really good process and thought it'd be a really good idea to roll that out across the whole of the country. So 10 years on since it was launched nationally, we've now got 86% of trusts and ICBs that are at least level 1. So if you don't know much about the accreditation process, just a little bit of a kind of overview. There are kind of 3 levels. And it's a dedicated framework that recognises organisations that have the very best finance skills development, culture and practices in place. So there are 3 levels, and each level builds on the level. So level 3 builds on level 2, and level 2 builds on level 1. So it's, if you look at the standards, it's very clearly each level builds on the one before. And at level 1, it's just if you're being assessed against level 1, but at level 2, you are being assessed against levels 1 and 2, and levels 3, you're being assessed against all 3 levels. So very basically, if we look at the 3 levels, level 1 seen as good practice, level 2 high level of performance, and level 3 leading edge finance function. And there are only 22 level 3s across the country, and because it's been running in the Northwest for much longer than the rest of the country, I think half of those, I think it's about 11 or so of those are in the Northwest. And then kind of the general principles, we see level 1 is policies, just check that you have the policies in place. Level 2, the policies are really working, and level 3, that they're really making a difference. And we see level 1 as more of a focus of the finance department. Level 2, the department is part of the organisation, and level 3 looks more like at system level. So the standards, so there are 6 standards are grouped into 6 kind of areas, as listed on the slide. I won't read them out. and we do review them yearly, and they're reviewed by this National Accreditation Steering Group. And actually, we've got the review meeting next week, but you'll all be pleased to hear that I've actually had no changes come in so far, so I don't think there'll be many, if any, changes to the standards this year, but they are reviewed just to make sure they're fit for purpose each year. And then they're signed off by the Finance Leadership Council. The Finance Leadership Council is made up of CFOs from each of the regions and was chaired by Julian Kelly. Hopefully will be chaired by Elizabeth Imani going forward. And all accreditations are taken there for official sign-off. So level 1, the process itself. Once you have completed the pro forma, you need to have evidence for a few of the criteria, but not many, and I'll go through them what they are in a minute. But majority of it, you don't have to actually provide the evidence. However, if you're going to go for level 2, it is a good practice to kind of make sure you do have the evidence in place ready to show for level 2. But we just require the sign off from the Chief Financial Officer to say that everything that you've written in the pro forma is actually a true reflection of what's going on in the finance department. Apart from the red lines where we do require a bit of evidence, which I'll go through in a minute. So once you have all that in place, and in the pro forma, your narrative explains how you've met each criteria, you can send that through to me and the 1NHS Finance team, and we will make sure that we review and feedback before that goes to the Finance Leadership Council. So we won't send any of the applications to the FLC unless we think that everything is in place. So we'll review and we'll feedback, and we can ask for any more information if we think it's needed. And then the FLC meets 3 times a year. They meet in January, May, and September, which is why the deadlines are always the last day of the month before those meetings. So 30th of April, 31st of August, and 31st of December. The accreditation lasts 3 years. But we do give you a kind of 6-month grace period, and we will remind you when your accreditation is starting to run out. So that's, every 3 years it'll need to be renewed. So going back to those red lines, what we do want to see evidence for level 1. We want to see that a copy of the CFO's job description, which hopefully should be easy enough to get hold of, just to see that it's clearly describes professional leadership, training and development, and ED&I responsibilities. We might already have one on the. We might have to check this and have one already from your organisation, but we do need the signed declaration, FD declaration from the current CFO. So when the CFO leads the trust, then the declaration needs to be re-signed by the new CFO. So I know the CFOs move around quite a lot across different organisations. You need to have a value maker and a face in the organisation, so a finance and clinical educator. And the face needs to have logged 5 hours of teaching, so any sort of finance education to non-finance staff, and that can be done on the website, just to show that FACE is given the time to do that work and they are active. And particularly, I think important at the moment, having a health and wellbeing champion. We do have a group on the MS Teams channel for health and wellbeing champions, where there's some really good resources that they're sharing across different organisations. We also require that we need to see evidence that every member of the finance function has an up-to-date job description and also has had an appraisal within the last year. Whilst we don't need everyone's job descriptions to be sent through to us, if you've got a log, you could send that through as evidence, or we would take a signed statement from the CFO to say that every member of their finance department has had an appraisal and has got an up-to-date job description for that. And then the bit I think that takes the longest and might be a good place to start if you've not started yet is about getting registered with the professional bodies. I'll come on to that a bit more in a minute, but CIMA have just reopened their process, so I'm not sure if anybody's been has been looking at that, but CIMA have had it closed for the last couple of years and they've just reopened it. But if you are going for April deadline, we don't expect organisations to have it in place by April because it's a bit short notice now. Rosa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that because we're working on our level 1 accreditation and we haven't got CIMA approved employer status because the scheme was closed. So I was just going to ask if we can still submit without it.
Yeah, you can for April, but from the end of August onwards, we'd expect organisations to have it. But for the next deadline, no, we don't. It's a bit too short notice.
To try and get it in for April.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you.
We also don't expect you to get SIPFA because they charge for it, and I'm not asking organisations to pay out any money for this, but if you want to get SIPFA and you have members of SIPFA, that's great. But I think the cost is about £220 for SIPFA. The other things is to have a finance skills development strategy and action plan in place. If you don't have one in place, but you'd like to see examples of some from other organisations, I've got a couple of anonymised ones, which I'm happy to share with organisations. So just let us know. And finally, we have the ED&I checklist. We expect that to be completed and to have an IND ambassador. Debbie, you've got a question?
Yes, I was going to ask about the guidelines. You said you've got anonymised ones. Have you got ones for ICBs?
I think the one we've got that's anonymised, I think it would work for both in terms of finance skills development. I could probably find an ICB one, but I think the one we've been sharing is from a trust.
Is it possible to share an ICB because we do have a different setup? It is much more difficult to find budget holders, etc. So I'd appreciate it if you
yeah, no problem. Yeah. So those are the red lines. Those are the ones that you need to provide evidence for at level 1. And then the rest of it, we just require the CFO to sign off. So just I know it's mainly about level 1, but just briefly, level 1 self-assessment, but level 2, you are peer assessed. So we will send assessors in and they will check that you have evidence for each of the criteria. And then they'll do interviews with 25% of the team, as well as the CFO at level 2 and the CEO at level 3. And it's not an audit. It is, it's a supportive process, and it's a chance to show off all the good things that your organisation's doing. I'll leave level 2 and 3 for now. But just to give a few of the benefits of the organisation, it shows at level 1, it really shows to show that the basics are in place and you get recognition for that. And it just allows you to review some key areas and look at areas that you might want to improve. We've heard from some organisations recently saying it's been really motivating for the team when they got their level 1, particularly in January. They were saying it's been a real boost for the team, particularly in the current climate. We say encourage staff to work together because it's not a one-person job; it's a team effort. And one of the things that we think is a lot of organisations have said is that it's really helped with recruitment, particularly for those organisations at level 2 and 3. And now with 86% of trusts and ICBs at level 1, it does, it raises the profile that once you've got your accreditation. We asked the CFO, who's recently gone through it, to give us a few reflections from what they've experienced the process. And they said it really helped them relook at themselves and the services they offer. It gave them the chance to reflect on their training provision and align that with the organisational needs, and it helped them set their direction for the finance department going forward. And they believe it will help them attract the best talent. And then just to give you a bit of a kind of a picture of where we are across the country, as I said earlier, the northwest is way ahead, but they has been going a lot further. But it's been going a lot longer in the northwest of the country. But you can see there about which regions have which levels, just to give you a bit of a flavour of the national picture. And then we have been looking at finance staff survey scores for finance directorates for the last few years, and we've tried to see if there was a correlation between your staff survey scores and your accreditation levels. And luckily for us, there is. I think we had in 2022 about 160 organisations in the sample where finance was included as a separate directorate. And as you can see very clearly, level 3 had the highest scores. And then we did same again for level for 2023. And actually, for some reason, for 2023, the level 2s scored higher than the level 3s. But when put them together, level 2s and 3s were scored higher than no accreditation and level 1 accreditation. And then this year, I'm going to say this with a caveat because I haven't had anyone check my formulas yet, and I'm not the best on Excel. But and we are also still giving organisations a chance to submit their survey scores if they are not available publicly, if they want to be part of the benchmarking tool that we create. But at the moment, this is from 193 finance directorates in the survey, and very clearly level 3 is higher than the other levels. And with the anomaly of we work flexibly, which has been like that for the last couple of years, but very clearly those without accreditation seem to score lower than those at levels 1, 2, and 3. Things to note for level 1, hopefully level 1 shouldn't be too onerous. We don't, apart from those few red lines, we don't require proof of criteria. But if you are planning on going for level 2, then do think about that when you're doing a level 1. I should also mention you have to wait a year between level 1 and 2, and 2 years between levels 2 and 3, just to allow a period of make sure everything's embedded before you move on to the next level. As I mentioned earlier, the CCAB accreditations do take time, so that's probably something to think about when you're planning on which deadline to go for. If you are stuck on any criteria, just let us know. Just drop me an email and I can find you some examples or talk you through what we'd expect from each criteria. And one kind of important point is we don't really see this as a tick box exercise. It is a chance to reflect and make changes and improvements. And we don't want people to kind of hit the target and miss the point. It is about having a chance to make improvements within the finance department, and it gives a kind of a benchmark standard across all finance departments. And I've just kind of just included, if you're not already convinced, a couple more reasons why it's important. It's a reminder of why it's important here, which Becky can share the slides afterwards. And then I've just included to include us a few quotes from organisations that have been through the process. So I won't read them out to you, but I can send them around. But most people who've gone through the process have said it's been a really good process for them to go through, and it's really helped with the shaping the finance department. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask now, and I'm happy to send through examples as I promised. And yeah, always happy to have a conversation with you outside of this meeting. If anyone would like a bit of help or a bit of direction, just let me know.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you. Doesn't look like I've got any questions in the chat, so just pausing if anyone did want to ask Sophie any more questions before we move on. Rosa.
So just a quick one. So on the April deadline, let's say if we were to submit our performer and all of our supporting evidence, say next week, if you had any feedback, what's the turnaround? Like, would we be able to get feedback and make any changes and still submit by the April deadline, or is that probably cutting it a bit too fine?
Oh no, that'll be fine. The FLC meeting's not taking place till the 14th of May, so even if you submitted on the 30th, I should have time to get back to you. It depends how much changes are needed, but you've got plenty of time.
Perfect. Good to hear. Thank you.
Yes, I was speaking to someone the other day, Sophie, who didn't realise that there was that. They thought that once they submitted on the 30th of April, that was it. No, that was the sort of the final one they were submitting. I was explaining, no, ONF do look at it, and we'll come back to you if there's anything that is not quite there yet. So that's good message for everyone. Any other questions for Sophie? No. Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, thank you very much. Sophie, I don't know if you're staying with us for the rest of the session or not, but you're very welcome to. Thank you. So next we're going to hand over to Alex and Carol from Derbyshire Healthcare.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Right, I'll try sharing my screen, so just bear with me. I've had some technology issues this morning, as usual.
We all know a bit about that. Yeah, see that. Perfect.
Can you see that? Perfect. Wonderful. So Carol's joined me today, and we're going to do a bit of a joint effort and give you our journey through the level 1 accreditation process. So my name's Alex Elf, Finance Manager for Derbyshire Healthcare, and I was a value maker in a previous trust that I worked for. And when I came to this trust and they weren't accredited, I put myself forward to try and help them through that journey, having done it before. Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Carol Turner. I'm Deputy Finance Manager at Derbyshire Healthcare. I, at the moment, am the Finance Department Training Lead. So getting involved in the accreditation seemed to fit quite well with that part of my role. And I've also come from another organisation who were level 1 accredited, so I'd had some involvement in the process, although not quite as much as I've had this time around.
So we're going to do a bit of a double effort here, Carol, aren't we? Just trying to give everyone an idea of the journey that we went through. So in the first steps, we obviously looked at the schedule that we downloaded from the NHS Finance website and looked at what we needed to do. First steps, it looked really daunting, I'm not going to lie. There was quite a lot of pages there, and it was not panic setting, but we felt that there was a lot of work to do. And actually, when you broke it up, it wasn't too bad or too onerous. So yeah, it's so what we did is we asked for volunteers. We took it to our team-wide finance meeting and just asked for lots of volunteers, thinking, you know, trying to help share the pain and give everybody little bits to do. So it felt like everybody was involved and hopefully engaged in that process. And we just built on the knowledge and the skills to improve what we were already delivering. So when we broke it down into those sections, we realised that there were things that we were already doing naturally, probably just not recording it. So it was a case of pulling all that together. We managed to get, correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, was it 5 volunteers through our department?
Yeah, I think it was altogether. Yeah, we lost a couple along the way, but we did actually do quite well for volunteers. People were quite willing to get involved and quite enthusiastic about it, which was encouraging.
And the volunteers that we had were across all the different departments within finance as well, and different range of bands. So we got quite a different mix within that team as well. So we set out to, we met initially, I think it was face to face, and then set regular teams meetings up just to keep on top of it to start with. So obviously everyone, probably like yourselves out there, you're all working remotely or mostly remotely. So it's very difficult sometimes. You want to be able to get into a room and like sit and see what you've got in front of you. So we did try and do that on a semi-mission. And I think the other thing was to set out a realistic timescale. You know, I think when we first set out, we were thinking August. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we did. And then we actually achieved the end of December. It was surprising how much like the day job got in the way from time to time.
Am I still sharing my screen? Can I just check? Because I've got my
Yes, Alex.
everything
yeah.
went.
Yeah.
Did it all go a bit? Yeah.
It just
yeah,
all went. I felt I froze at one point then.
I think, like you said, you are having a little bit of trouble with your connection, but we are, yeah, still getting you. And it's not in presentation mode, but we can see the slides.
You can see the slides.
Yeah.
So my screen's froze at this end. Sorry. I've got. Oh, you're on the next steps.
Yes.
I'm actually in a hospital base at the moment. I hope the technology was going to be a bit better today, but obviously not.
We can see the next step slide.
So the next step, like I think Carol just said, we set regular meetings and protected the time, just so we could make our way through it. And then we created a folder within the finance directorate where we started to evidence against every single element that was in that the submission document. So I think it was like 1A, B, C, and we just made sure we had a folder and that we evidenced everything. And that was with an idea, I think Sophie alluded to, but the idea of heading towards level 2 eventually, that we've got everything in place for level 1 and we've got all that evidence there ready.
Yeah, we've probably got more evidence than we really needed, and it was surprising actually how big that folder got really quickly. Some of it was really easy to it was stuff that we'd already got, and it was just a case of downloading it from our own intranet, from our own website, pulling out sections from the policies and procedures that we'd already got. But it did make us take a step back and look at what we had already got, and the vast majority of it was fairly easy to source. It was just a case of pulling it all together and keeping it in one place. And it was surprising actually how much of it there was once we'd got it all in one place.
Yeah, absolutely, Carol. It was, you know, so when you first look at it and it looks massive, actually when it was broke down and we started to evidence it, we realised we were doing a lot of it. So we've kept that all in a shared file so everyone can see and add to it should they need to at any point. And I've put on that slide easy wins. There definitely were. There were things that we just were able to download straight away and it was ticked off. So we went from that list of, 40 things that we needed to do straight away. We were down to the few that we needed to spend that bit more time on. And it helped that we had that group of volunteers, because we all took bits away from that. So it wasn't just one person, it was the 5 of us, and we all, when we met, we'd take one element away and we'd go away and we'd do it back to the team for us to review it and then put it in the evidence file. So it kept it rolling on a regular basis. And I've put there, use the examples. And again, I think Sophie alluded to that earlier on, that the examples that we were sent were actually really helpful. It kind of sometimes put it in context for us. It just helps us sometimes the direction of where the question was taking us, because we wasn't always really clear. So the examples really helps us draw on that. Sophie, do the examples come out with the submission document, or did we have to request them? I can't.
Yeah, request them. If you've got anything you're stuck on, we can send through examples.
So just moving on to that next slide. So engagement, I think that was really important as part of the process to keep the team, the wider, the initial team, the wider team, and then the trust abreast of what we were doing and why we were doing it. It was important that, we took where we were to these meetings and what the next steps were. So we were getting the wider team involved, even though it wasn't necessarily directly. We were trying to draw them into the level 1 process, because we know if we head towards level 2, we're going to need more help with it. It needs to be a team-wide effort.
I think the things that we'd got that were easy wins were really helpful on that as well, because they showed that we could make progress and we could move it on, and actually it wasn't that onerous. So we were actually moving on, we were getting somewhere relatively easily in some areas. So I think that helped to keep people engaged. It didn't come across that it was a real slog and we were having to spend hours on it. It was just a case of, yeah, we are already doing a lot of this stuff, we just need to formalise it and recognise it.
It also helped that it didn't feel like a tick box exercise, which I think sometimes, it can sound like so engaging everybody at those team meetings, and they were seeing that they were already doing it and that they were contributing to it, I thought was really helpful. And we're quite blessed in Derbyshire Healthcare that we have a number of networks already in place. And so when we were talking about value makers and FACE and health and wellbeing champion, we have a disability network lead, and quite a few other network leads that we were able to contribute as part of this evidence file as well. And being part of that team meeting, the wider team meetings, you engage in the leads of those networks to be involved in this process as well. Do you agree with that, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. And they were all quite willing to get involved, because they're obviously interested in this kind of thing. Otherwise they wouldn't be the leads for these networks. But yeah, a lot of it was already set up, so that did make those criteria much easier to meet.
Yeah. And lastly, as part of the process, we did a finance survey, and we did it on Microsoft Teams survey, and it was like a quick 10 questions that went out to all I think all staff in the trust, I think banded 3 and above, just to ask them what they knew about us. Everyone talks about finance department, but what do they actually know about us? What do they know where to find us on the intranet? If they, need any information. And it also aimed questions at budget managers, what training they get, what is there anything else that we can do? There's kind of multiple choice questions. And I think it was 10 or 11 questions. And we found that really, really good. The feedback that we got from that, it was very mixed, but we then had a direction of where we needed to be. And I thought that was really a good way of engaging the staff within the trust to engage with finance and understand what we're doing.
Yeah, and there's some things that have come out of there that we're working on outside of things that strictly relate to the accreditation process as well. So we have got a lot more value from it than just meeting a criteria for this process, there's some stuff on there that we can put in place that will improve the kind of finance offered to the trust going forward. So that's been a really, really useful part of the process.
Yeah, I agree. Since then, we've set up different project teams to manage different elements that came out of that survey. And the thing is that will then all evidence towards that level 2 when we, when we look to going forward for it. There's a lot of things that are in there that we will have then achieved ready for that next submission. Are you still hearing me?
Still hearing you, Alex. For me, the screen is. Oh, yeah, no, it's moved on. Yeah.
Have you got the next one? My screens keep going black, which doesn't help. So I do apologise.
I can tell you which slide you're on. You're on lessons learned.
I'm on lessons learned. So this is the last slide. So be realistic with your deadlines. I think Carol mentioned it earlier, but we set off with it. It's going to be done for August. Like I said, work takes over and trying to initially engage staff. So we then submitted in December, and yeah, we were we were successful, which was great, and we've been able to put that on team-wide comms and trust-wide comms as well. But we did, when we first submitted, I put it there, read and answer all the questions. I think we missed the 1.4D, which Sophie mentioned earlier on in the red lines bit, and that was the tick list, and we got to make sure. And again, we went down after the submission, we were told about it, so we then went back through it and made sure that we then answered all that and got that back as part of that submission. So we got a bit of leeway there, as in from the initial submission. So yeah, definitely lessons learned there. And I think Carol will agree, we need a larger volunteer base next time.
Yeah, definitely. We managed it with the willing volunteers that we'd got. We had a little bit of turnover in the team, and some of the volunteers moved on, which didn't help. But I think we did perhaps underestimate the amount of time that we would need to dedicate to it. And certainly if we aspire to level 2, I think we do need to get a bigger team, certainly to direct the process, and then to also disseminate some of the work out to the wider finance team. Definitely, yeah.
I think that's the biggest lesson learned, isn't it, Carol? So, and we're now reflecting on the survey that we've just talked about and the other elements where we know we've got work to do. So we're going to spend this next 12 months doing a lot of that work, and then we plan to get another survey out within 6 to 12 months of the original one, after we've managed to put some of those things into place, just to see as a trust that, see what comes back on the feedback, and hopefully that it's improved. Because again, that will all then feed into when we start to look at going for that level 2 accreditation. Is there any questions? I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Alex and Carol. And well done, Alex. It's very stressful when you've got technical issues when you're sharing. So really appreciate it. Okay, so I've got a question from Anna.
Hiya. I know you said it took you a bit longer to do it than you expected. How long did it roughly take, sort of from when you started doing it?
I think, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about May time.
Right.
Yeah,
Probably
sure it
6
was.
months. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really helpful to know.
Yeah,
Thank you.
At least we were overly optimistic, I think. Yeah, but I think it was mainly, it was a bit stop-start because of the work pressures that came along from time to time, meant that, and that affected all of us. It wasn't just one member of the group, that affected all the volunteers at some point. So we'd have meetings, and at certain stages everybody had just put their hand up and say, look, I'm sorry, I've not progressed it, I need to go away. And then somebody else would have made progress on something, but somebody else would have been under pressure and not been able to move it on. So it was difficult at times to balance it with doing the day job as well, but we got there in the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I think Alex might have frozen, so it looks like you're going to be carrying the any more questions, Carol. I did have a question myself, and also if anyone else has one, please do raise your hand or put in the chat. But just while anyone's thinking, the question I had, I don't know, Sophie, that this might be more towards you, but interesting to hear, Carol, whether you came across this and what you guys did at Derbyshire Healthcare. But you mentioned in the presentation around sort of realizing that there were parts of the criteria where you were, you know, doing the things, but it's just that you hadn't been documenting them. So obviously, you know, level 1 is a self-assessment. So apart from the red lines, you are more describing how you're meeting it. But you know, that you didn't have, say, email trails or meeting notes or that kind of written documentation against things. What was your approach and what would your advice be, Sophie, for people in that situation? Do they need to wait and go back and get those things a bit more embedded before they're doing their level 1, or is it more about describing what you will be doing to start recording this in evidence when you submit your level 1 so that it's ready for level 2?
Well, at level 1, as it is a self-assessment, if you are doing it, then just describe how you're doing it and then start thinking about collecting the evidence for when you go for level 2. But as long as your CFO signs off that you are doing that at level 1, then that's fine.
Yeah, just to come in on that, it did make us kind of sit back and think, oh yeah, actually we are doing that, but at this point in time, how could we prove it if we needed to? So it did make us take a step back and think, right, is that something that we need to tighten up on and start to gather evidence on? We'd got bits and pieces that various people could pull together, but there were some areas where we weren't being consistent across the team.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so any last questions for Carol and Alex? Doesn't look like it. Thank you both so much. I'm going to hand over to Mike now from East Midlands Ambulance Service to hear from him on their level 1 journey. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, hello. I'll just try and share my screen with you all. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Rutherford. I've been asked to talk to you about level 1 towards excellence accreditation and my experiences, and to pass on some advice if I can. Happy to take questions at the end. As you can see, I work for the ambulance service, East Midlands, known as EMAS, and my role at EMAS is Head of Financial Management. So the goal is to get to be able to use this email banner at the bottom of our emails. So when successful, that's what the banners you can use look like. So a bit about me and EMAS. So I've been in the NHS 30 plus years, 25 years at EMAS, doing a variety of roles, financial accounting and financial management. I'm passionate about finance training. I joined the NHS as a graduate NHS finance trainee in Lincolnshire. And until recently, I was the skills development lead for EMAS. We're relatively small in finance terms. There's 10 whole-time equivalents in financial management that I lead and 7.6 whole-time equivalents in financial accounting, which brings its challenges with it. Our forecast outturn turnover for this year is 317 million, and we outsource our financial accounting to a local NHS trust. So my experience at level 1 accreditation, I've been successful on doing it twice. So I first did it in May 2021 during COVID, which had its challenges in itself. And then we've just, at the end of November 2024, we reapplied. So that's a picture of our Director of Finance signing the FD commitment to the aims of FFF, which is one of the requirements that that's required to complete level 1 accreditation. So sorry for a bit of duplication on the presentation to some of Sophie's comments and work earlier. but I assume I'm not having to sell this too hard, because you're here on this call wanting to learn about level 1 accreditation. So I'm preaching to the converted, I hope. But I think the benefit to bring out really is that it gives broad assurance to the organisation that we work in that the finance department is highly proficient, works to high standards with a positive culture and practices in place that benefit our patients. I don't think I'll dwell on the others too much more. So for me, having done it twice, the most challenging part of the accreditation process is becoming an approved employer with each of the 4 accountancy bodies for CPD and training. So that could be a lot of work, but I've got a solution that will make everybody's life easier that I'll recommend, and I'll send details out later of how to do that. So it's called the PGP Foundation Award, and PGP stands for Promoting Good Practice. So this issue has been dealt with by the SDN network in London a number of years ago, who were getting feedback that getting the accreditation with the accountancy bodies was time consuming, complex, and resulted in people being really put off applying for accreditation. Again, so basically it's a one-stop solution to achieving the employer accreditations that all the bodies are signed up to doing, if you like. They've agreed that if you've got this award, then you'll be eligible to receive all employer accreditations with the accountancy bodies. And to do this requires some administrative tasks and some information but it's not as time consuming as if you were doing it approaching all 4 of the bodies. So a key strand of it is to have a training and study policy for the finance department, and I'm sure all our trusts in the Midlands do. Another key bit is to provide a sample of job descriptions with objectives and appraisals. It's not everybody's, but it's a sample, and a sample at all levels and across financial accounting and financial management. Some evidence of the CPDs taking place, and a commitment to training through FSD. So I had to send in the invoice that we pay for our SDN, and to show a training budget, which I'm sure we all have. So in summary, this PGB Foundation Award, it saves you valuable time. You collate the information once and send it, rather than sending slightly different information, not once, not 4 times, but once. And the other beauty of it is once you've got the award, the accreditation with the accountancy bodies is in place for 3 years. This award and this service, unfortunately, doesn't come free, but it's a relatively small fee. We pay £510, and you pay it to a consultant who's set this award up. But in terms of making life easier, trust me, it's worth paying the money to save the burden. I'll ask that a document I've got outlining the award and what you have to do and the information requirements in a bit more detail is circulated alongside this presentation at the after the event. And at the end, I'll leave you contact details for the person who you need to contact to start that process if interested. So what other observations? It was interesting listening to Derbyshire Healthcare and their experience there. My recommendation would be to set up a project group to oversee the application, as it's a team objective. I did it twice, all on my own, if you like, and I saw it that we had all these things in place. So it was an administrative process of gathering the evidence, easy wins. So it didn't really require other people to get involved. But as I've found, as I've reapplied, it's become more difficult, and I would seriously suggest a working group, a steering group, to take it forward, to share tasks and spread out the workload accordingly. It has become more difficult as the criteria has become more stringent. So, for example, as you can see on the slide, this time we need a health and wellbeing champion. That first time round we didn't have to have, and somebody signed up to the One NHS Finance Software Skills Network, which until recently I'd never heard of. And then inclusion and diversity ambassador as well. That was a new requirement. Who's required to attend regional meetings? So that was all new, and that's why in a small department for us, that's it's quite a challenge. As previously mentioned, level 1's an internal self-assessment. So if you can persuade your director of finance there's the evidence there, then they can sign it off. It's less. I see that as being easier than the process of getting peer review and people qualified in assessing these accreditations as being more challenging. There you go. That's a repeat of Sophie's. These are the 6 parts of the evidence required, so I won't dwell on that too much longer. And for information, I put a link to the actual evidence schedule that you need to complete. This again is a bit of a repeat of Sophie, but it's the red items that need to accompany the application, and there's far more of those on the list than there was first time I did it. So that's it really. I'm happy for people to contact me afterwards. I believe in sharing knowledge and experience across the NHS. I don't think we do it enough. So please, if you've got any questions and I can help, I'll be delighted to share my experiences. The PGP award person to contact if you're interested is Roland Richard from the Amber Partnership, and he has been working in collaboration with London's SDN, and there's his contact details there if you're interested in the accountancy body accreditation process. I'll stop sharing there and just open it up and see if anybody's got any questions.
Thanks very much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Definitely interesting. You having the experience of doing it twice, doing your original one and your renewal. So just to kick off a question from me about that. So obviously Alex and Karen were talking about having only done it recently, wanting to make sure that the things they've put in place as part of doing their level 1, they continue to embed, trying to make sure it's not sort of done as a one-off in order to tick that box. So how did you find that, on your journey between the original application and the renewal, trying to make sure that the areas that the level 1 highlighted did kind of continue to be embedded?
Doing it the second time was an opportunity to review what we'd done and how embedded things were, and generally they were embedded, and yeah, it was an opportunity to stand back, if you like, to see how we were getting on and were we where we wanted to be.
And any thoughts of level 2 for East Ambulance?
Yes. Yeah, we want to do it, but it's about resource, and what it will take to do it, I think, has got in our way, really. But we need to overcome that. That's why I say we need a working group, get more people involved, share the load. And that's one of the big learnings for me. I thought it was an administrative, pick up this evidence, get this policy, do this, do that. And I could just do that. But it became more than that. If you wanted to do it properly and have everything embedded, if you like.
Yeah, no, really helpful. Was there any questions that anyone wanted to ask Mike? I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Really appreciated. So I am going to hand over for our last presentation of today. I think I just saw Matt join, and I believe Tricia is on her way shortly. So hoping it's okay to hand over to you, Matt, to start the presentation from Shrewsbury and Telford.
Yeah, hi,
and Tricia's here as well. I'm just letting her in. Hi, Tricia. Throwing you right in the deep end, handing over to you and Matt to get started on your presentation. Hope that's okay.
Okay, I'm not sure if we've got Adam yet. I did say we'd join at 5:02, so he might come in. I'll get the slides up anyway.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, I forgot that Adam was joining as well. Did you want to just wait for Adam to join, Tricia?
I'm trying to open the slides, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Oh. That says I'm sharing a window, but I'm not sure what I'm sharing. Start again.
Have fun with technology.
Yeah.
Theme of today.
Do you want me to try and share from this side, Tricia?
Do you mind? I think it's because you were in them and it said read only when I tried to get on there.
Can anyone see these slides now?
Yes. Yeah, I can see the map.
Okay. Have we got Adam?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do. Adam was going to do the introduction and the closing remarks. We can do them if that's okay. And then if he comes along, he can interrupt and take over.
Let's do that. Yeah. Yes. Sorry, this is my fault throwing you guys in early, but yeah, whenever he joins, we'll pause and he can do his introduction.
Okay. Okay. So welcome everybody. I'm Tricia Penny. I'm the Finance Staff Development Lead for Shrewsbury and Telford. We've got Matt Morgan here as well, who you can introduce yourself, Matt.
Hi, Matt Morgan. I'm the Finance and Costing Manager here. See Adam's joined us as well.
Yeah. Great.
Just as you were introducing yourselves, perfect timing.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You okay?
Yeah, I've introduced ourselves, so if you could just introduce yourself and then away you go.
Well, thanks, Tricia. So I'm Adam Winstanley. I'm Deputy Director of Finance at the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital Trust. I hope everyone's okay this afternoon. So I think I'm just going to do a very brief introduction, then I'll hand over to kind of Trisha and Matt, who did a lot of the work in terms of our level 2 submission. So from a kind of staff finance team perspective, we have just over 100 members of staff. We are mainly based off-site at the Shrewsbury Business Park, which is kind of in between the two hospitals that we serve. But we do have finance teams on both of the hospital sites as well, in terms of coding, cashiers, etc. And then the financial management team obviously travel between the sites. We achieved our level 1 accreditation back in May 21, which was about 12 months before I joined the trust. So I joined in April 22. And when I did join, what we were looking to do was kind of really progress our level 2 accreditation application, which we initially did in December 22. We had the visit. There was some really positive feedback, but a lot of the feedback, and I won't steal kind of Matt and Trisha's thunder, but a lot of the feedback we had is all of the plans that we had were really positive. We just hadn't really, whilst we'd started to implement them, they weren't embedded at that point. So we had a follow-up review in March, which went really well, and then we achieved our level 2 accreditation in May 23. Since then, what we've kind of been continuing to do is embed a lot of the processes as part of level 2, but then also look at what do we need to do to achieve the level 3 accreditation going forward. Obviously, there's 18 months, 2 years before you can apply for level 3 after level 2. So we continue to work through that, but we can go through that in a bit more detail. And I think the big bit for us was the learning from level 1 to level 2. Obviously, level 1 is just kind of a self-assessment, whereas level 2 is externally assessed. So there is a lot more work that goes into level 2, but it's definitely worth it. And I think some of the work that we did, a lot of the work is business as usual. It's what you're doing anyway. It's just then how you match it back to the level 2 accreditation. So that's kind of a little bit of an introduction. So I'll hand over to Trisha and Matt.
Thank you. Okay, so I think one of the first things to say is there's so much information out there. So don't feel you're on your own doing this. So there's so much there on the One NHS Finance website. The showcase sessions, webinars. I mean, for example, one of the things we needed to do for level 2 was to have a mentoring, or it might be for level 3, I can't remember now, but we needed to have a mentoring scheme in place. So I went to one of the showcase sessions, and they had a brilliant system set up, and you were able to ask questions and contact people afterwards. All the paperwork that they'd done was available. So pinch with pride is what I'd say, that, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that we took their information and, you know, created our own version. But it just saves so much work, really, because everybody's trying to do, you know, all these tasks. And don't feel you're on your own. So there's a lot of information out there to help you. And in our system, we already had a local trust who'd already got their level 3, actually. But they really helped us with our level 2 accreditation, shared some of the, you know, some of the things that we weren't quite sure on. They shared their paperwork so that we could adapt that. And we've gone on to help one of our system partners who's just done their level 2 application in the same way. So we've supported them. So it's just all about sharing your knowledge. And then one other thing I'd say is to sign up for things, any opportunities that you see coming along, schemes, working groups, networks, sign up for them, because there'll all be good evidence when you come to do your application for your accreditation. If you're part of different groups and you've got evidence, you know, of how you're applying those and being part of the network, really. And then just be aware everything you do, how that's going to fit into one of the standards, and don't leave everything to actually when you do your accreditation application. Just as you go along, think, oh, where might that fall into? Have a look at the competencies you need to achieve, and keep that evidence, keep it up to date, and slot it into one of the competencies and have it ready. It's much easier to do it as you go along rather than do it at the end when you're trying to do your application. Thanks, Matt, for moving the slide on. So it's really important that you have an engaged working group when you're doing your application, and that you have cross-representation across all different bands and all the different departments in finance, because everybody's got something to contribute. And don't underestimate what's involved, because when you read some of the competencies, you might think, oh yes, that's quite straightforward, but there may be more to it than you first think about, and it might be quite time consuming. Divide up the tasks. So we've done it by the standard headings on the application, and try and RAG rate each task, green, amber, red, depending on where you think you currently are, what you need to do to get to that level, and what you're going to do, to actually get there. And set yourself deadlines. Quite easy, especially with the way things are at the moment, to let things drift along, and make sure you've got timescales for achieving each of these standards. Meet regularly so you can identify any pinch points, so where you've got issues that you might not have any idea how to create the paperwork that you need, so that you can think about how you might find out that information, who you might need to contact. Make sure that you've got an owner for each task as well. And communication, as always, is very important, feeding back to everybody in the wider finance team to let them know what you're doing and how you're getting on. And remember that you're building on to level 1 with level 2, and likewise when you go on to level 3, you're building on level 2. So collate it as you go along. And don't forget that you need to have that level 1 information up to date, because that needs to be resubmitted at level 2. And when you go on to level 3, you need level 1 and level 2 information all kept up to date. So as I say, it's much easier to do it as you go along than try and do it all at the end. Thank you.
One of the key bits we thought as part of it, obviously it's quite a long process to get level 2. We were probably working on it, for a good 12 months. So you obviously need to pick it up and drop it at some points, at pinch points like year end, for example. So not as much will get done. So in terms of doing that, we effectively took the spec and the criteria that we needed to hit, and set it out in Excel, so we could and with folders behind it, so we could then cross-reference quite easily to the data. I'd recommend also setting up like a data dump folder as well. So internally, if you see emails or something, like for example, if one of your finance teams been recognised for a long service award or something along those lines, you can just dump it into a folder for now and then badge it to the whatever evidence that it needs to tick next time, when you have a bit more time available. So this is kind of like how we went about it. And one of the things I would say as well is, if you need to do the employer accreditations with either SIPFA, ACCA or CIMA, try and get onto those quite quickly. You may already have them in place. And I think as part of doing the level 2 stuff, you realise you've actually got a lot more in place than you probably think anyway, just by asking questions and linking in with other teams. For example, we found out about user groups, like system user groups and Logic's costing supply user groups that were going on, but just because you're sitting in an FM role, you don't necessarily know those things are taking place in the trust. So it's quite a good learning curve really as well for oneself. And this is how we tended to set it out. So we had the standard and the type of evidence we needed to submit, and we'd literally cross-reference it. This is really helpful when we need to submit as well. So you can submit this to the assessors. So we met with our assessors, Nick and Jamie, prior to the assessment, just to understand the way we would submit the data. I luckily had the benefit of working at Robert Jones, which Trisha alluded to before. So I went through level 2 with them. So essentially this is kind of it's gone through level 2 twice really. So it seems to work quite well. And due for the resubmission piece, it was really useful. So you can literally, and if we were light on the evidence that we submitted originally, we can just clearly note in red what we've submitted. So the assessors can like go straight to the bits they need to check rather than looking sifted through the whole data, because we're conscious that they're giving up their time for this as well, and we really want to fast track it to make it easy for them to hopefully approve us. And then we kind of link to all the folders behind. Then we've got our like different versions of what we've been sent. So version control is quite important. And for example, if you're some of our evidence is around internal communication, so we have like a communicate letter that goes across the trust and cascade briefings and stuff. So they only want to see an example of that kind of stuff. So that's not actually created by finance, but it filters through finance. So finance would play a part in it at some point. So it's all good evidence, really. So it's, again, it doesn't have to be new stuff. It's just capturing what's actually been fed through the organisation. And obviously, if you're sitting there and you don't have these things coming through your organisation, then that's probably one thing to tap into, really. And essentially, then when we handed our data across to the chaps for the kind of audit and review, we zipped all the files then. So when the file looked like us, they're quite easy to get across, like technically, to the team to review. And then in terms of preparation for the actual day, we would have discussed with Nick and Jamie some dates for when they were going to do the assessment. And they did it all virtually, Tricia, didn't they, in the end? Because I think we were kind of still like in the realms of coming out of COVID, really. So they did it all virtually. And one of the key things I think is to get diary time in. So they'll want to speak to clinicians. So we devised a bit of a crib sheet as a way of not to cheat, but a way of improving the education as well, and like reinstilling that education throughout the trust. We wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of FFF and One NHS Finance, and that they're actively engaging with it. So we did a couple of sheets internally for our finance team, but also then externally, and I had a quick chat ahead of kind of them picking examples of clinical engagement. We had a quick chat to them to make sure they weren't scared and fearful of an audit, really, and had an idea of what they might ask about, really. So yeah, just to make the conversation go well, and obviously to improve the working with finance, really. I think that they were quite well received in the trust, to Tricia as well, in terms of we circulated a few videos as well about just basically about One NHS Finance, what they can get from it, for example. So quite well received. And then back to Adam.
Okay, bro, thanks both. So in terms of what's happened since we achieved our level 2 accreditation, our 2023 finance staff survey results, we were the 7th most improved results in the country. That's not to say that our results were top, because they weren't. Some of the kind of people promise questions we had really high scores at kind of 7s and 8s in some areas. There is more to do, but there was definitely an improvement from what we've seen previously. On the back of that, Claire, who was the other Deputy Director of Finance at the time, and myself, we've done numerous presentations both across the system, regionally and nationally, in terms of our kind of staff survey results and the journey that we've undertaken, some of the things that we've done. We've also, and on the back of that, one of the main messages for us, you probably all know that staff is one of the most challenged trusts financially in the country, and lots of media scrutiny. But actually our view was very much that without really highly trained staff and doing all of this, I think around level 2 FFF or NHS Finance, actually without that, then we can't have engaged staff and we can't actually face the financial challenges that we've got. So we're really keen to continue that development. In the last 12 months or so, we've had a HFMA graduate for the first time in quite a while, actually, within staff. So that's been positive. And we've also taken part in the Insight Placement Scheme. And that individual is doing really, really well, and has actually indicated they'd like to stay with the organisation going forward. So that's really positive, and we are looking to continue that going forward. We've recently just started hosting our first T-level students, linking in with local colleges. And in terms of apprenticeships, so we had our first apprentices started in September 2023. We now have a total of 15 members of staff that are studying through the apprenticeship scheme, which is huge. I think going back kind of 2 or 3 years when I first started, there was 1 or 2. So we're now up to a total of 15. That will continue to grow. And what we have seen is some of our longer standing members of staff as well. They've seen people coming in want to do apprenticeships, and they're actually really keen to progress themselves. So then, as a result of all of that, in December, we were nominated for or shortlisted for 2 HFMA awards, so both the Havelock Training Award and Finance Team of the Year, and we were really proud to win both of those at the HFMA conference. So it just shows about all the good work that's gone on in the trust, noting that there's still a lot of work to do, but it just shows that the journey that we've been on, of which gaining level 2 accreditation was a big part of that. So I think that's all of our slides. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for any of us.
Thank you all so much. I hope it's helpful for people to see, you know, how it kind of moves on from level 1, level 2. Obviously, there's a big message there around the fact that there is, you know, there is quite a jump up and you know, kind of more time that goes into it. Quick sort of question from me, you know, that list that you just shared, Adam, of some great achievements that you guys have had recently. You know, I'm not saying it was all down to the accreditation, but kind of how much of that stems from, you know, from when you started working on accreditation, even from level 1?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it kind of gave us the platform of the things that we were looking at doing. And as Matt kind of went through the individual sections, it gives you that thing to kind of focus on, like, what do we need to do to achieve that? And then how can we build on that? And I think that was kind of the starting point in terms of the improvement in the staff journey and in terms of engagement and developing the team, really. So it really helps us guide us our way through.
Brilliant. Paul?
I think everyone's sort of raised the issue about this being on top of the day job. How did you manage to overcome that?
Thanks, Paul. I think it's a really good question, and some of the presentations that we've done regionally and nationally, that's come up around. Actually, there is so much to do as part of the day job, but I think from the DOF down, we were all really keen that actually this has got to be a priority as well as the day job. And actually, without engaged staff and well-trained staff, you can't do the day job to your full potential. I think there was one question we had at the regional board around how did we get our board to sign it off. But we were very much, well, actually, this is the finance team, this is a priority for us, and we will continue to do that. And I think a lot of the work we've done around with the wider organisation as well and getting their engagement has been really positive as part of this journey. Working here, we've got more engaged staff or clinical operational staff that are engaged with finance than anywhere else I've ever worked in the past. And that's testament to the work that we've done. So I think it is difficult when there's a day job as well, but we just have to make it a priority.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Adam? Did you, I guess maybe more for the level 2, because it is a lot more involved, in terms of the finance team rather than the kind of clinicians and wider staff, did you have people who just weren't interested, you know, at all, not necessarily in a negative way, but just sort of, you know, didn't kind of see the vision or want to be involved? And how did you approach that? Were you trying to get everyone on board, or was it a case of kind of, you know, focusing on the people who really wanted to get involved?
So I think it's a bit of both, really. There will always be people that don't want to be involved in it and don't want to kind of get on the bus. And before I started, we started to do a twice annual kind of finance half day away day. The very first one of those, one department within the finance team decided they didn't actually need to be there. It wasn't for them. At the time, the Deputy Director of Finance actually took the away day to that team and did a half a day session in their office and made them go. After that, they all turned up. And I think it's about focusing on those individuals that are really keen to push that journey forward. And we've had Trish and we've had Matt and a number of others that have been really keen to push that forward. And actually, I think as the rest of the team have seen kind of that progress, they want to join in as well. And I think it's that nervousness to start with, as well, we've heard all this before, nothing really gets followed through. It's actually doing what we say we were going to do. And being honest with the teams as well, when we haven't achieved what we expected to, or as quick as we expected to, we've been really honest to say, hold our hands up. Right, we wanted to do this. We know it's been really busy. There's been other priorities, but it is still a commitment that we will do it. And I think that's how we've got the engagement across the department.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Matt, you had
I was just going to add to that as well, especially like with new members of staff who are coming in. I think it's a good chance to get them into it quickly. So yeah, I think inevitably there's always going to be some laggards and people who aren't that interested. And sometimes it feels a bit like wasted effort on those people, doesn't it? Because you think you're better off concentrating on the ones that will input, but it doesn't always have to be senior people either. Like sometimes it's people who are like doing their training. They can work alongside like competencies, can't they? So I think it's trying to almost identify people that are key, as Adam said, and utilize those and give them the opportunity to get involved as well. Because if you lay out the data as we have, you can almost like chunk up a few little tasks for them to do, and you can keep an eye rather than doing all the legwork yourself.
Yeah, Adam.
Thanks, Becky. I was going to say, and then in terms of the assessment day, because you provide a list of the finance team and certain individuals are chosen to be spoken to. When we did that list, we didn't just choose all the people that were really engaged. We did choose some people that weren't as engaged. And actually some of the feedback from the assessors was really positive, that actually it was good to see that different view of one or two members of staff that say they weren't overly bothered about what we were doing, but others that were really keen and to kind of drive it forward. So that is always useful as well. Don't just pick the members of the team that will kind of back up and promote it. Yeah,
that's good advice there, isn't it? Be transparent with your assessors and as part of your assessment process. That's really, really good advice. Okay, any other questions for Adam or Tricia or Matt? Nope, can't see any more. Okay, look at that, 10 minutes early. Can I thank all of the speakers from today, again, so much for their time to be here right now, but also, doing their slides and thinking about their presentations. Such a busy time of year, and I hope it has been helpful. And like I said, we're recording this, and I'm hoping that many other people will find it helpful to watch back. And thanks to all of you for giving your time today. And I hope everyone has a good rest of the day and good rest of the week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
you.